I have a strange question to ask y'all. How is it that we can relatively easily count the number of people who die each year, but when it comes to the data that we would use to keep people alive, it is messy and missing and locked behind, in my family's case, a $4,000 price tag, and that's just for a genetic screening. The information is treated like a luxury item. And when I say luxury item, I genuinely mean luxury item. Like the price tag. The price tag, y'all. So yeah, and that's especially true when it comes to maternal health. The reason I'm talking about this right now is I was in a meeting just recently, like probably an hour ago, like right before I had to go pick up the kids. And we were discussing data. I'm in a lot of meetings about data, actually. But for me, it's a great thing, because if I'm in these meetings about data, and I'm learning about this data, and I'm poring over data, then you don't have to. In a way, think of data as a recipe. Or if you're like me and you love bananas and you love letting those bananas get nice and spotted and sweet and mushy, and they're so sweet and mushy that the only thing you can do with those bananas is make that delicious banana bread. And we call it banana bread, but we already know it's actually banana cake, because banana bread is sweet. The great thing about banana bread, if you had the right data, you would know that with really sweet bananas, you don't really need to add sugar. You don't have to add sugar. You don't have to add much sugar. If you do, I don't add sugar to my banana bread, and my kids eat it just fine, but that's just me on my high horse. There's data all up and down that recipe. For real, there's data all up and down that recipe. The ingredients that you would put in banana bread, that is data, right? The temperature that you would preheat your oven to in order to bake the bread that is actually banana cake. That is data. The amount of time that you would spend letting that thing bake, that is data too. So when it comes to a recipe and baking something as simple as banana bread, it requires data. Now, I did not say that. Actually, well, yeah, it requires data, and that's pretty much your recipe. There are some people who are just like, wait, Lauren, wait. My mom doesn't follow recipes. She doesn't. She uses her senses. Whenever she's baking anything or cooking anything. I don't think I have ever seen my mom open a recipe book. For real, I really don't. But in that case, the data is in her mind. It's internalized. The same way that you internalize information, which is data, when you're learning something, right? Like, you don't want your maternal health provider to have to open up a textbook every time they talk to you. The recipe for you is in their head a lot of the time. Now, they might want to reference something, like they might want to reference something to refresh their memory, or if there's a new development, or if they know that they need to source additional data and want to know what the right type of data would be. Like when I say source data, guess a form of data sourcing, or one way of sourcing data in healthcare is tests. Your lab tests, your procedures that you get done, or the diagnostic procedures that you go under, an MRI that gives you data, things like that. Like, we don't expect providers to open up a textbook every single time they are caring for us again. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not following or referencing a recipe. A recipe doesn't literally have to be printed there, but that recipe is based off of data that recipe is based off of information, and then their interpretation of that information and then they end up applying that information, or at least they should, to the intervention that touches you. Okay. So if the recipe in your provider's head is wrong, then you have a bad outcome. I mean, you can have a bad outcome even if the recipe in your provider's head is right. But if the recipe is wrong, you can have a pretty bad outcome. There are some folks that you hear the saying all the time, practice makes perfect. Someone else came out with an even better saying that it's not that practice makes perfect, and actually iteration makes perfection. Let's just say that. But when it comes to that, practice makes permanent, right? Practice makes permanent. You are training when you're training a model. You're training a model with data. You're running that data through that model over and 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 over. You see what I'm saying? Over and over and over again. And then those schemas get developed. Just like in your brain, those schemas get developed. And then we're able to riff off of it, we have frameworks that make it easier for us to leverage those schemas in our brain. Those schemas are based off of, the foundation of all of that is data. The foundation of evidence-based care, evidence-based intervention, the foundation of evidence is data. So yeah, I digress with that. So again, if the data is wrong, then you have a bad recipe. And if you have a bad recipe, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a bad outcome. And actually, I shouldn't even say good or bad, to be honest with you, because there's also relativism baked into here too, right? With some data, it's binary, right? It's one or the other. You're either, and it's not really on a continuum. An example would be if I have a light switch, it's not on a fader. Let's act like faders don't exist. I have a light switch and I can flick it on or off. The light is either on or the light is off, period. That's what it is. But when it comes to healthcare data, it's not all data is like that. There are nuances, right? And there's also data that we get that we deem close enough, right? Or it's the only data that we have access to. We use that even though we know that other data might be available. But yeah, I digress. Incomplete data, bad recipe. Incomplete data, incomplete recipe. And when we are drawing conclusions for interventions, it's very helpful to have better quality data. Let's just say that way. And also better quality ingredients too. Providers, hospitals, researchers, the government, we all rely on data, which forms that evidence, which forms that recipe. And if it's incomplete, then there are consequences to that. And dare I say it, when it comes to us, and I'm talking about females, we have a lot of incomplete data. When it comes to moms, when it comes to babies, when it comes to certain communities or folks with certain demographics, I think we have a crisis in data. So there's a pretty big irony here, right? The irony of evidence is what I call it. The irony of evidence-based practice, because everybody talks about evidence-based care. And I know I'm talking to folks right now that might not be in research, might not be in healthcare. You might just be a mom listening to this while you're cooking banana bread. But in healthcare and in academia, and when it comes to folks that are the team of folks that went to school and literally get paid to take care of you, We talk about evidence-based care, and we talk about evidence-based care a lot. But evidence is weak when the data is poor or the data is lacking. So in maternal health, this is especially thin. We're building care on shaky ground. How do we know this? There was a recent event that happened, right? Where someone who shall remain unnamed mentioned a certain medication that will remain unnamed. And then all of a sudden, there was this hubbub about saying when this person mentioned that this medication should not be taken by people who are pregnant. And then all of a sudden, the internet erupts and Facebook erupts. My DMs erupt. Folks are mad and folks have some type of way, right? Folks are on both sides going, and I'm not even talking about political sides, okay? I'm talking about researchers and whatnot. Like organizations are coming out with position statements saying, "Oh, but this study and this evidence says that this is safe." There's no evidence saying that this isn't safe. Or someone's like, "Oh, I dug up this evidence. This data, this interpretation of the data that says that this actually is safe. Or this actually isn't safe." So there is room for debate and there's more room for question when there's a question about the proof and the evidence. And again, what is evidence? Data is evidence, or at least, let's just put it that way, okay? I'm not going to get into how evidence is used in the court of law, but data is evidence, and it's based off of data. But there are holes in our data. For example, let me give you an example of how maternal health gets the short end. I was in a car crash in 2021. That was absolutely wild. And, you hear people say, wear a seatbelt, wear a seatbelt, wear a seatbelt, wear a seatbelt. I wore my seatbelt. Thank goodness I wore my seatbelt. But what a lot of people don't realize is that seatbelts are typically tested on tall men. So we've drawn the conclusion that everyone should wear seatbelts. Of course. But when we're testing seatbelts, when seatbelts are tested on human subjects, they are tested on tall men. They're tested on folks that don't necessarily have, how do I put this lightly, a bust, bosom, if you would say. Definitely not pregnant. You know what I'm saying? And so that's kind of like what's going on with the rest of everywhere else, right? But research is largely based on men. So imagine being a demographic where I believe there are more women on this planet than men right now, or more females than men. I believe that we are in the majority. Please correct me in the comments if that's not true, but our health and how things affect us, we don't have enough data on that. There is so much stuff I want to say right now, but yeah, we don't have that data, and we kind of make data stretch. We make data stretch, and we hope. There are blank spots when it comes to pregnancy. There are blank spots when it comes to breastfeeding. There are blank spots when it comes to measuring the effects of life, social determinants, so have you, on certain communities as well. And those gaps, I believe, are evidenced by higher risks and worse outcomes. In healthcare, it is extremely important for you to understand a little bit about why data and health data in particular is extremely valuable. It is so valuable, in fact, that if a provider needs data and it takes too long for them to source that, or it takes too long for them to receive that data from where it's stored, they might do something like repeat a test, right? Like, how many times, this is a true story, okay? I'll say that this happened to a friend. So, of mine, a friend of mine had a child. That child was just months old. That child stopped breathing, and nobody knew why that child stopped breathing. Of course, the child is living today, which is why I'm able to tell this story right now. But the experience was absolutely wild, because what ended up happening was that child ended up picked up by an ambulance and getting taken to the nearest hospital. When that child ended up at that hospital, and I'm telling you, this child was less than 6 months old, right? The child arrives at hospital A, and the child's breathing at this time and stable and everything like that. But the thing is, nobody knew why this child had that episode of what we call apnea, when you stop breathing. And actually, the child actually became cyanotic. Cyanotic is when you turn blue. Like, why did this child stop breathing? Why did this child turn blue? And so all the king's horses and all the king's men get together, and they're looking for answers and reasons why. So they are seeking data. They're seeking evidence. They're seeking an indication of what went, or of what happened, or what is happening. They didn't want to fly blind. They were flying blind until they received certain data. And that data could tell them, actually, I digress. Let me not go there, because there's a point I'm trying to make right now. So, hospital A, and I say hospital A because this child ended up going to multiple hospitals and being treated by multiple providers. Each of those providers ordered their own x-ray of this child that was less than 6 months old. Okay? And I want you to think about that for a second. Because if you are a mom, or if you are a person that is not in the healthcare field, you might just be like, oh, that's horrible. Okay, yeah. That's terrible. That's terrible. Not only did all the providers order x-rays, if you were not a healthcare professional, you might just be like, okay, yeah, go ahead and take it. Take the child. But if you are in healthcare, you would know that, one, these folks should have known that there were probably other x-rays taken. But two, and this is what I really want to drive home, you're also dealing with radiation at that point. And not only are you dealing with radiation, which, like when you take an x-ray at the doctor's office, they put that apron over you, and actually evidence is starting to say, or whatever, that maybe you don't need the apron. There's debate over it, but we're debating over what? We're debating over the evidence. But this wasn't for teeth. This is a chest x-ray, multiple chest x-rays on a child. So you're supposed to weigh the benefits, the risks and the benefits before doing anything. And when it comes to diagnostic imaging and diagnostic procedures and whatnot, there are risks and benefits. But had the mom that I know very well not been aware of the risks of, or the potential consequences of exposing a child to that much radiation at a time, then yeah, that child would have been exposed to a lot of radiation. And the reason why that child would have been exposed to a lot of radiation is because the providers decided to source the data themselves for whatever reason. There are many reasons why the providers would order their own x rays. I mean, me personally, when I'm doing my assessment, I like to assess, right? But when it comes to health data, all the king's horses and all the king's men typically source the same or typically use the same data. Like you're not going to have to draw a million labs for each provider, like, and they're all the same lab. But when it comes to an x-ray, because the providers wanted to, I'm guessing that because the providers wanted to access this data quickly, the velocity of that data exchange between providers, between organizations, between units, not states in this case, might have been too slow. Maybe, who knows, whatever. But what ends up happening is you end up paying for that. Taxpayers will pay every penny. Every penny for your care. And of course, insurance is not going to turn around and pay for that either. Insurance is going to look at that bill and be like, what? 5 x-rays? Same view? How do you justify that? Let me tell you this. If they can't justify it, if the organization or the provider can't justify it, then it doesn't get covered. And then you have to fight with insurance, even though it wasn't you. So what ends up happening is that family ends up paying 5 times for it. So hospitals, organizations, whatever, are wasting billions of dollars on broken processes, on broken systems, on all sorts of things. And the thing is, that was just one example of the importance of having data in a timely manner and what can actually end up happening. Better data exists though. Like when it comes to, anyway, better data exists. And a lot of times we have to go through waste in order to access that better data because sourcing that data or interpreting that data is expensive and inaccessible. That is an example of why after my car wreck, and when I ended up in the emergency department, they ordered a CT before ordering an MRI. And actually, it took months and months and months and months for the insurance to agree for me to have an MRI. But anyway, I digress. So people, as a result, people suffer while answers sit out of reach. And folks are flying blind. And if they're not flying blind, a lot of times they're flying with their vision obscured. Just like, I don't know if you've ever been in a blizzard or if you, whatever, been in a really bad rainstorm and you're driving and your windshield wipers only go so fast. You're still going to where you're supposed to get, right? You're still on your way. Hopefully your GPS is working well, and you get there safely, but it's not as easy to see the obstacles in front of you. It's not as easy to see the terrain in front of you. And so it's not as easy to roll with the punches, so to speak. So anyway, but yeah, I feel like, especially with what I'm seeing online right now with moms and birth workers right now, it is like folks are flying on a Boeing plane. Can I say that? I don't know. Folks are flying on a Boeing jetliner with broken instruments and drowning in low quality data and really starving for data that matters. And as a result, we have delays, we have higher costs, and we have unsafe care. And of course, dare I say it, I imagine that that could be something that can exasperate disparities in certain locations, certain populations, certain demographics, and certain groups of people. I'll leave it at that. So, this is my very, very long way of saying that this affects everybody. It doesn't just affect moms, it doesn't just affect babies, but poor data in maternal health. And I'm not just talking about the amount of data, but the quality of data matters as well, right? There's a whole cost benefit, because what's best might be too expensive and remain out of reach for a lot of people. But I think it contributes to outcomes. Just like the same way that if one neighbor on your block has busted pipe, a busted water pipe, everybody's bill goes up, right? It's going to be very difficult to find the source of the problem or to attribute, yeah, to find the source of the problem when you're down there digging and you're looking for the leak and all you see is muddy water coming up. It's very hard to see it, to visualize it. But when it comes to maternal health and quality outcomes, I think making sure that we're able to source data, access data, interpret data, and have high quality data is extremely important. And when that is combined with the awareness, when the awareness that we raise is backed by evidence, and instead of the assumptions that many of us have to make, then it becomes easier, this is my hypothesis, to build solutions accordingly instead of building solutions or instead of just building. There's building solutions, right? And just like how data can be like this, it can be on a spectrum for like how awesome it is, right? Just like research can be how awesome it is, or like there's a degree of separation from the source of the information. That this is why, like in the court of law, when you have testimonies, like when they say that this testimony is coming from the defendant, like you're hearing this from an eye. Well, actually, we shouldn't talk about eyewitness accounts anyway. But good high quality data can improve outcomes, essentially, can make solutions better, makes it possible for us to have better solutions that actually address real problems, real situations, can help us uncover factors that we never thought. But anyway, I'm excited because in the last 2 weeks, I've had the opportunity to be in rooms or opportunity to hold meetings that have resulted in me literally spending hours in front of this whiteboard and ideating and dreaming about the type of data that we will be able to leave behind to contribute to innovation, solutions, dare I say it, the greater body of knowledge of maternal health, and maternal health specifically for communities. And that makes me excited. It makes me really excited. So, yeah, this has been my very, very long way of saying or explaining to you a little bit of the madness that goes on in my head, and a little bit about how I think about data and why this is a big deal to me. The idea of contributing to the greater body of knowledge, one, that's really cool, right? But the ability to support a means of a community, to support the means of to support the how do I say this, to be able to support research and community initiatives around maternal health that actually are of high quality and that have the potential for really moving the needle for that community and changing the outcomes and, and trajectory, dare I say it, of whole communities. Like that stuff gets me excited. It gets me so excited that I invest and I build, but I invest the little that I have. I mean, I'm all I can do is steward the resources that I have at my disposal, but I'm investing in it. I'm investing in it, and I'm investing in it, and now we're starting to collaborate more and discuss data with a purpose, data for the sake of communities, and doing so without exploiting the folks that produce the data. You know what I mean? Like it's really really exciting. It's really really exciting. Like how do you know if you're making progress if you're not measuring, right? But anyway, it just gets really really exciting. It gets really 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 exciting where it's not just about measuring either. Like with data, and I know I sound like a geek, man. And I mean that it is what it is. I am a geek, right? But like with data, I don't okay, hold on, let me go back. I don't know if you guys have if anyone watching has ever heard of something called artificial intelligence or AI. I don't know. And we know that AI is a big deal and that folks interact with AI all the time. AI affects us all the time, especially in healthcare. Structured, beautiful, organized, clean data, right? Can be used to build data sets. Data sets can be used for research, or data can be used for research. Data sets can be used for research, right? But data sets can also be used to make models. Data sets can be used to train AI models. So now we're talking about a future where a community can make researchers very happy, right? Like where researchers are asking questions and they can actually access data that can actually help, right? But also, we're talking about a reality where those models can be used to build real solutions for that community. And I'm not just real solutions for that community. And that gets me really, really excited. It really does. Like real solutions for that community. It gives us the ability to test hypotheses, It gives us the ability to see where we are. It gives us the ability to have better outcomes. It gives us the ability to reduce waste. It gives us the ability to, we call it expedite things, you know what I mean? For things to get done faster, because communication or transmission of that data can happen faster. But you can't transmit data that you don't have. And you can't just layer technology or AI technology on top of any model. Like, you can't just use any model. Like, when it comes to technology, just like any tool, right? Like, I'm not going to change a tire with a hammer. I have no need to change a tire with a hammer. I'd use a socket wrench. You know what I mean? This can really change the game for a community, for folks. It really can. Like all those things that I talked about before, the Boeing plane, the multiple x-rays, as an example of the importance of being able to have access to data fast, right? And to be able to leverage that data as well. That gets really, really exciting too. I don't have a call to action here for you. I am letting you know that I am an excited little geek, and I am a hopeful little geek. And I'm letting you know that the investments have been made and continue to make these investments, right? Continue to build, and that the work has already started. So it gets me really excited, because we can't fix what we can't measure. We can't measure what we can't see. And I can shout as loud as I want. I can raise awareness as much as I want. But if I don't have the evidence to back it up, if I don't have the receipts, then billions will continue to carry the cost. So yeah, change is underway, and yes, awareness helps accelerate it. So I'm letting you know, and it's really, really exciting. So if this hit home, feel free to pass it along. I know that I talked a lot, but I have a lot to be hopeful for right now, and I wanted to share that with you. All right. Catch you on the other side.
Look out for new updates.